List.io.
Hello everyone and welcome to the latest episode of You Deserve Fresh Lettuce. I am your co-host Rachel.
And I'm Delia.
And welcome to season 2 of the podcast. We're going to be talking about the First Wives Club. So these are all of the ladies who were married to someone and then that someone moved on and married someone else. Dun, dun.
Da, 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 da.
Okay, so technically we are in the First Wives Club.
Technically we are. Yeah, because we were the first wives.
Yeah. So one of the reasons that we wanted to do this particular episode is we've had lots of different conversations, of course, about everything from our exes to other people's exes and what people do and what we're seeing differently in others, right?
Right, of course.
And one of the things is that you might know from the previous season one we've talked about, and even some of our lives on at YDFL Podcast, by the way, Instagram, is that the men seem to learn some things from their first marriage so that when they go to the second marriage, that woman's getting kind of a different version of
They're
him.
getting a can of act right, I think.
Act right.
Act right. Can of act right.
Hey,
You
and
get it?
this
Like
is not a can of whoop ass.
They're getting a can of act right. So I think that from what I've noticed in my experience of the people that have been married like the second time around, the husbands tend to be a little bit more generous. I've noticed that.
Yeah.
And I think that like when you're first getting married to the first person, it's always kind of like, how are we going to pay for the wedding? How are we going to buy our first house? How are we going to buy like the first luxury car, take the vacation? Maybe you're only able to travel once a year, if at all. And all of a sudden come the second wife and she's getting the luxury items, the luxury traveling.
Or maybe a little more romance.
More romance, exactly. Maybe he's not as aggressive as he was the first one. But that doesn't mean that it's going to last, because we talked about this before too. Usually on the second marriage or even third marriage, you would think that it would last, forever. And I guess statistically the numbers don't kind of like add up for them. It just goes down. But I think when it comes to the comparisons, I always feel like the second wife is always constantly looking at what the first wife did. Like,
it is the ghost of the wife's past, right? Like they are, wife number one is always chasing the ghost. Actually, wife number two is chasing the ghost of wife number one.
And then wife number one says, he never did that for me. He never took me there.
Yeah.
He never, look, she's only using him for, his money. If that's the case, he takes her here. He claims not to have money. And if they're paying child support to the first wife or alimony,
maybe he missed those payments and yet they're like in Hawaii together.
Yes, and all of a sudden she's like, well, he never took me to Hawaii. And it's always this whole back and forth where they're constantly fighting. But I think that the second time a man gets married, he has a better understanding and a better grip of what he now wants. And they usually say that the first wife, they marry the first wife based on she could be a good mom.
It's all
she could possibly
logical.
Like it's just a logical thing. And then the second wife comes into play, and that's emotion and love.
Yep.
And that's where that comes into play.
Yep.
She may not be more domestic, she may not be prettier, she may be younger though, but it may be a whole lot of those things going on.
So let's talk about why they might be younger. So last season we talked a little bit about this. I remember specifically some guys that are in the family had said that the reason that they date younger after being in a relationship so long with someone 10 years, 12 years, 50 years, not 50 years, 10 to 15, right, years with kids and everything, and then they exit that situation, and instead of pursuing women that are closer to their age, maybe like from 38 to let's just say 48, they're going young. They're going 28, 32 or whatever. And so the conversation has always been like, okay, so what is it? I get physically why, right?
Of course.
But we've talked about this. Do they even have the intellect? Do they have the experience? Can they even keep up? The guys don't care about that. One of the main things that they say is because she hasn't been through shit. Whereas when you date someone that's older or you get involved with a woman that's older or been married and divorced, she's been through so much
the red flags
that
are
nothing
so
gets
obvious,
past her. And so the main thing is then every little thing they do, they feel, right? It's a red flag, or it's a we have to have a talk. It's a whole thing. And when they go younger, she hasn't been through nothing, so she
doesn't know better.
just rolls with it, doesn't know
better.
better.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the time also, if the second wife, hasn't had kids and the husband has kids with the second wife, I know that with the first wife, maybe he was just trying to be on the hustle and bustle. And so maybe he wasn't there at home. He wasn't very present.
Oh, yeah, because he was building.
So now with the second wife, now he's becoming a father.
He's
now
present.
he's there. He's present. He's trying to, literally make up for the lost time of the last wife, of the things that he didn't do with the last wife. Now he's like, you know what? I know how fast the kids grow, that these kids, I'm going to make sure that I'm there for them and I'm present. And that's kind of the hard part for the first wife, to see that
the first family, the first
and the
kids,
first family, the first kid. And then there's always that resentment from the kids, because they're like, my dad never spent that much time with me. He never took us here. He never took us there. We'd be lucky if we went on vacation once every 5 years.
Yeah.
And they're taking off, once every 5 months. And so there's always that resentment, and there's always that comparison, in my opinion.
Yes, there is.
So it's kind of...
I do want to add a little tidbit to that. If you're in a position and you're the first wife and you have the first family, okay, and he's moved on and he's with some young thing and they have their kids and they're doing whatever they're doing, traveling around, doing all the things that you probably would have wished and hoped, but understood that it wasn't feasible because he was building or whatever. My advice would be, I would not highlight that with your children. And if you hear them complain, I wouldn't necessarily endorse what they're saying. And the reason I'm saying this is because I'm glad that you brought this up, because I have actually witnessed moms, especially with social media, be trolling, going, oh my God, look at your father. Look at your father. He hasn't even sent the check, or he didn't do that when you guys were growing up. Look at that. He's taking the kids here and there and doing whatever. And your although you may think that, please pick up the phone and call one of your besties. And not your children. You know what I mean? Because your kids are going to come to you anyways, probably seeing it and go, wow, they went here, and just be like, well, call him and tell him next time he goes, you want to go with them. You know what I mean? Instead of making a huge emotional crisis out of it, because I think the children will turn to us for comfort and guidance. But if you're joining them in the mud going, yeah, right? Look what he's doing, whatever. I feel like that could just breed
and see
more negativity.
But see, here's the thing. Initially, when you're doing that, it may build some animosity. The kids may build animosity towards the dad. But kids aren't, they're going to grow up and actually see, what really happened. And what happens is they start to see how mom always bashed dad. And guess who's the bad guy? Not dad. Not dad for doing whatever he was doing, just living life. You're going to be the bad guy because you have to bash your ex-husband about his new family, about the new wife, how she gets a new, newest SUV, or the newest car, the latest car, the latest, vacation and travel and money and clothes. And then all of a sudden they didn't have those things. And there's that resentment. And guess what? It's best if you just not say anything, and then just kind of, bless them and let them carry on.
That's it.
And that's all you can really do.
If you are the one who ended the marriage, you know why you ended the marriage. You know that it was, whatever, you had enough, right? And you let him go. There's that whole adage of don't break up with someone just to teach him a lesson, right? So it's you let him go. So that just means you just have to let him go. Whatever, he could be perfect to the other one. At the end of the day, it doesn't mean that he could have been that for you.
Right.
And it could mean that this woman isn't even half the woman you are, but it's perfect for him.
Right.
And so the same will be true for you. When you move on and you find that someone, there might be people go, oh my God, why is she with him when her ex was this, that, or the other? For you, though, this might be the perfect situation.
Right.
And it might fit wonderfully. And so I think that the better we get at letting go and stop, there's a saying in business that says, where your focus goes, energy flows. And so it's I would say to you, if you're in the First Wives Club, and he's out there running amok and dating this one, and now he proposed after only a year. I mean, there's so many stories.
And then forget about the proposing, and then it's a comparison of the ring. Because usually, here's the deal. Usually the first wife has like this, usually, not always.
Yeah, because she met him broke. She met him
And so usually the ring is this little pebble, and all of a sudden the new wife gets this massive ring.
The princess cut
and
with all
of
the
a sudden it's wait a minute, how did you get her that? But what about me? And it's always this battle of what about me? But if you already let him go, it should never be about you anyway. So
you're not his problem.
You're not, and you have to keep on moving on.
And he's not your problem.
And if you're the second wife,
Yeah.
If you're the second wife, regardless of how you got there, you won. Just enjoy that moment, enjoy the ride, you know, be grateful, be a good wife.
Yep.
And the first wife, enjoy or think about the positive moments rather than thinking about what you don't have and what he has now and if he's successful now and the money he has and the money that should have been yours. It's like shoulda, coulda, woulda. It's not.
And I love that you brought up the whole like you won thing, because that's probably the number one thing that when it comes up, I literally go, if you won, why are you still in the race? Right. I don't understand that part.
That's the thing.
And what it is the guys know exactly what they're doing when they put down their ex in a certain way for a certain reason,
or put them up or rise them up. Like she made the best enchiladas, yeah, and then it's like she made the sauce homemade. And the
I would literally never make enchiladas again.
Right. No, nor would I. But some of them would be like, "Well, let me go. Yeah. I'm going to get special like freaking hot sauce made.
I'm going to grow my own chiles."
And so it's this competition thing that happens. And I think that if you could just be the best version of you, and you won, and he's with you and your family, that's it, and try to keep it peaceful, and that's it. That's all you can do, rather than like comparing and competing, and why does she get this and why does she get that, and you know, he used to give her this much money, and maybe you're on a budget. Sometimes the second wife gets put on a budget because the first wife didn't know how to control herself too, though, even though they might have not been that rich.
He just has to pay out a whole lot of money.
Or in child support.
First wives, let's face it, we literally are probably the most painful exit that they'll ever experience. Right. It's probably the most expensive and the most painful.
Yes.
So wife number 2, right, if it all ends, it will probably not be as painful or as expensive. It depends, though. You hear all kinds of different stories. I remember hearing the story of Kelsey Grammer, a big actor, and he didn't sign prenups with anybody. 3 divorces, lost tons of millions of dollars each time because he didn't believe in prenups. And so he got hit every time. But I've come across a few men that, and here's an interesting one. I met someone and became friends with one, and he's like a big kind of Fortune 500 guy, and he never divorced his first wife. He actually did do a legal separation. They had 2 kids together. They were married 25 years, almost 30 years. And then he moved out here in Southern California and was dating, you know, all kinds of people.
Models. Yeah.
All those types. And at the end of the day, I remember when I found out that he was not actually divorced, I said, "What are you doing? You're dating so-and-so. She's thinking you're going to propose." And he said, "Yeah, I did this so that I will never get remarried. I have that as an excuse. And number 2, if I ended up being a dumbass and falling for one of these girls, I know my assets and everything will always go to the mother of my kids and my kids, because I know that she'll have best interest." So it was like this whole thing with him.
Like a business strategy with him.
But it was almost like such a high level of respect that he had for his ex-wife. And
that's nice.
Not everybody has that, and I understand.
No.
But I've seen it more often than not. And so at the end of the day, look, you're not going to hear the words of appreciation as a first wife. You're going to probably feel in many ways like the doormat. But when you met him, you probably chose him for potential. We talked about that because we're young and we chose potential. But guess what? He's probably arrived in his own right. Maybe he's a welder, right, that we're talking about. Who knows? He's just decided that he's going to get remarried to someone else.
Yeah.
And guess what? You're not any less than just because of who he's with next. Just like I would say, go find yourself someone. And don't find yourself someone because you're thinking, I need to get one better than him or better looking or better.
Okay, so that's a funny part about it. So I recently met a girl, and she got remarried. She had 2 kids, and we were at a party, and the husband that she was with, he had never been married, never had kids, but she did. And the husband said, "No one's ever going to want you with your kids, and no one's ever going to marry you." And so to prove to him that she could get married, she married this young guy, had, I think, another 2 kids with him. He's much younger, like maybe almost 10 years younger. And I think now she's going through it. But what happened is she initially did that not knowing that she was basically trying to get back at the husband to be like, watch me not only marry younger, also have 2 kids, and then watch me build with this man. But now she's going through through it. But I think what happens is when you do things to be vengeful, initially you might get the upper hand. Initially, yes, it seems like, okay, I'm proving a point here. But at the end, you will lose. Because there's this karmatic force that happens. So if you're going to be with someone, be with them because you want to be with them, not because you're trying to prove something.
Gut check your motives
Always.
The entire way once the marriage ends.
Absolutely.
Gut check your motives. If you know he hangs out in a certain place, don't just randomly decide you're going to just show up at this place because, I love the whatever here.
The music,
no,
the
relax.
food,
darn well you're trying to be in the line of sight. There's all these things. And so you just got to remember that, it's normal, by the way, to be curious. And it's normal to want to see. But it's one of those things like, why do that to yourself?
No, there's no point.
Yeah.
And I think if you are the second wife, then you've won.
That's it.
If you are the first wife and you are divorced, enjoy your freedom because you know why you did it or why it ended.
That's it.
So I think that at the end of the day, whether you're first wife, second wife, third wife, even fourth wife, oh my gosh, that's crazy. What all that matters is gut check and always know nobody is going to make you happy but yourself.
That's the thing, right? Everybody's like out there looking for
love.
We talk about the soulmate things and all that kind of stuff, but at the end of the day, I know for me personally, when I walked away from my marriage, which was a long marriage and 2 kids and all that, I literally said to myself, when you walk away, make sure you're willing to be single for the rest of your life. Doesn't mean I want to be single for the rest of my life, but I was willing to do that. And that was kind of my gauge of like, is this thing that he did so bad that I'm willing to be single for the rest of my life? And obviously the answer ended up being yes. And so
you still have more life, so there's a possibility that they may not be for the rest of your life.
But you have to be in that mindset of willing to take that risk
and be done. Yeah.
And that's what I was willing to do. And so it's really interesting now when you're out here in the world, the motives people have to jump into marriages is so insane. And I've met so many women now, more and more, right, that are choosing to remain single. And so they had their marriage and they had their kids and they're choosing to go, yeah, I kind of been there and done that.
And I kind of like it.
And I kind of like it. And it's this whole first wives club of women going, I can go out tonight and meet the girls for dinner at the last minute. And it's like...
And I can cook dinner if I want. And if I don't want, I don't have to.
And the kids aren't little anymore.
And you've already done all of the, we're not bashing marriages because I think like if you have a marriage, try to work it out.
But this is First Wives Club.
First Wives Club, we can definitely speak on it. It's one of those things where after a while you're like, if I want to up and just move to London, I can move to London. Like nothing is going to stop me.
Yeah.
But now if you're married, you have kids, you planted seeds in a certain place, you got to kind of stay there. And that's kind of the hard part. But there's a sense of freedom that happens too when you are the first wife and you're done. And sometimes, people say like, I won the prized possession, which is like your ex. And then you're like, well, you'll find out soon, and it may be one of those things where he may be an amazing man to him. To her, because he like learned.
Or because they just match better. You know what I mean?
True. And when you're younger too, I think a lot of the times, I think that when you're a little bit younger, you're a little bit more immature, a little bit more petty, and the things that really bother you, now you're like, it's just not worth the fight.
Yeah.
It's so petty. And so I think that a lot of the time, you become more level-headed where you're like, is that worth us getting into the biggest fight and then like not speaking to each other for like a week or sleeping in 2 separate rooms? That's another thing.
They say
that's always the weirdest thing to me.
Oh, the separate room
thing.
Oh God, the couch or the separate room.
I just can't do that.
They say a wonderful therapist, I don't remember who it was, said if it's not gonna matter in 5 years, do not fight over it. Just let it blow over. And I really love that statement.
That's pretty.
But if you are in the First Wives Club, you've already left, he's already moved on, and guess what? Like Delia's saying, just enjoy your time. Enjoy your time, and when you live your life your way, the right person will show up. They'll match your energy,
and if it's meant to be,
it'll absolutely be. And I'll give you another little example. So I know a guy that I've known for many years, almost 30 years. And he was with someone that was a good woman, okay, and she cooked and she cleaned and, she was a good mom and she was all these things, okay? And when I tell you that he left her, he ended up with a woman after her who is like she's like, I'm not gonna cook. I'm not gonna do that. Miss me with that. And when I tell you, he just loves her. Like, he just is like enthralled with her, like the whole thing. And so as women, come on, we need to stop with this whole, like, again, having this ghost that we're competing with in our minds, or making these stories up in our heads about how, oh, I do all these little details, and so that makes me better. I fold your
socks and underwear. She didn't do that.
She didn't do that. Yeah. It's like, what? They don't even freaking... No, nobody cares.
Yeah, nobody cares. So, I mean, yes and no, right? I mean, it depends. You have to know your guy, and you have to know that these are the things he appreciates, and it has to give and take, you know? Like, marriages are give and take, and relationships are too. And even if, like, for you're dating someone, all of a sudden, you know, you feel like you're giving more and more and more and more and more, you know, there's a moment there where you're like, you know, maybe it's not going to work out. But when you're married, you got to work those perks out. You can't just be like, I'm going to throw in the towel, I'm done. Yeah. You got to figure out, what is it within me that I can fix? How can I fix this?
Whatever you do in your marriage, if you like to get dolled up and you like to cook in your heels, or you like to go, whatever are doing,
it is that you do,
make sure you're doing it because that's what you genuinely enjoy doing. It's not because you want to, like, impress him. You'll probably impress him anyways. You know what I mean? So and I find that the more genuine women are to themselves, is being authentic to your true self.
Right.
That's what then they fall in love with. Nothing will keep him faithful if he's just not a faithfully minded man. Period. But if you're in the First Wives Club, at the end of the day, you don't have competition. Like, whatever that girl got from your ex, you already know what that's about. You're good. You're just good. Go like this.
And you move on.
You wish them the best, and then you just pray to God that the next person you get, you understand they're probably used goods too, and they come with their own baggage that you got to figure out. It is what it is. It's part of the journey.
It's part of what it is, and there's nothing that we can do about it, but try to work out the perks and try to, like, do the best that you can to, like, whether that's making the best enchilada casserole or not, or maybe you don't like to cook and he's okay with that, then that's what you do. But never ever go through life feeling like you have to compete with someone.
No.
Be the best of yourself, and you will never have to feel like you're competing with anyone, whether you're the first wife, second wife, third wife, fourth wife. If you're the fifth wife,
well, honey, we are going to pray for your spirit.
Romantic man. Cheers to you for always cheering at your wedding.
The Lord is like, she is back again.
Back at this. She found another victim.
Yes.
Victim number 5. Like, damn.
Oh my God.
Like, I can't even get a second victim. Yeah. She's got 5.
We're like, we can't even get a DM back. This lady's on her 5th round, right?
Yeah, no, but whatever it is, I hope that, you know, it makes you happy. Cheers.
Cheers. And you know what? Don't forget that you deserve fresh lettuce. See you next week. Cheers.